Tonight's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by the upcoming horror movie, The Endless. Brad Miskett Bloody Disgusting says it's strange, bizarre, twisted, manipulative, and completely original. You know, everything horror fans keep begging for. Acclaimed filmmakers Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson return from their 2014 cult hit Spring with this mind-bending supernatural thriller about two brothers who revisit the UFO death cult they escaped as teens, only to find there may have been truth to the cult's otherworldly beliefs all along. In theaters now from Wellgo, USA. Check for showtimes, theendless-movie.com. And keep checking the Shockwaves Facebook page because we'll be giving away some awesome merch and copies of The Endless, soon including a limited edition blacklight poster and copies of the Blu-ray. It's a really fun movie. Go see it.
Today's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by Shudder. Brought to you by AMC Networks, Shudder is not only a premium streaming video service, but an experience unlike any other. Created for fans of all degrees of thriller, suspense, and horror, Shudder is home to the largest and fastest-growing human-curated selection of high-quality, spine-tingling, and provocative films, TV series, and originals. And there's always something new and unexpected for Shudder members to explore. Premiering only on Shudder this week is Downrange, the new film from the director of Versus and The Midnight Meat Train.
Stranded at the side of a road after a tire blowout, a group of friends become targets for a mysterious sniper. From director Yuhei Kitamura, Downrange is an incredibly suspenseful, fantastically violent, and masterfully tense thriller from one of horror's most unique filmmakers. Watch Downrange today, streaming only on Shudder. Shudder is available for $4.99 a month or $49.99 with an annual membership, but our listeners can get a free month by entering promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of thrillers, suspense, and horror available to stream anywhere.
The Shockwaves team is heading to Texas Frightmare next week, and we hope to see everybody there. Texas Frightmare is the Southwest's premier horror convention, and it's now celebrating the 13th year. They always have the best guests, the best panels, and you don't want to miss it. The Shockwaves team will be there moderating a lot of events, plus we'll be hosting Dead Right Horror Trivia, and we'll be doing a live Shockwave show on Sunday at 1 p.m. Other guests include Misha Barton, Clive Barker, and several of the Cenobites, including Doug Bradley, all the kids from It's Losers Club, Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, Ron Perlman, Charlie Band, Brad Dourif, Katie Featherston, and more. Head to TexasFrightmareWeekend.com and get your tickets now. We will be selling Shockwaves t-shirts there. We're going to have a booth. Ryan in the Blumhouse team is bringing awesome Blumhouse stuff.
I'm bringing posters for Halloween.
What?
Guys.
We got Halloween posters.
I got a big box of Halloween posters.
Save one for me, baby.
Hell yeah. So we've got all types of merch coming.
Touch Elric's face.
And you can touch Elric's face.
I might be wearing a Michael Myers mask.
Because
when you touch my face.
Well, I'm rubbing up on your face right now.
I'm expecting Elric to just bring hand sanitizer and just be constantly dousing his face.
I did not get sick from the face touches at Chattanooga, so I'm okay.
That is amazing. So come to Texas Frightmare, hang out. It's going to be an awesome weekend. Touch Kane's face.
Okay, and welcome to episode 94 of Shockwaves. We're all back in the Blumhouse conference room, finally.
Yep.
One of your hosts, Rob G., sitting here with Elric Kane.
Yep, right
looking much more sober than the last time we did the show together.
I was sober after a lot of the first night, really.
Yeah, so much vomit, dude.
I did like the Elricist that somebody made.
Oh, the Elricist, that was wonderful.
Yeah. But not as good as the Predator Purge trailer Ryan alerted me to.
That was
John
Holland.
Amazing.
John Holland, yes.
Shout out.
Ryan Turek is here as well.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
How did you feel hearing about his exploits since you weren't there and you only heard about them in text?
Everybody needs adult supervision.
There was so much vomit.
But we'll see what happens next week.
Oh, that's right. It's
Texas.
I'm only there the last night, so remember that, guys. It won't be long, so I'll behave.
That's a lot of partying.
Yeah, but that means you have to fit it all into one
Okay,
night.
I won't behave. You've got it.
I know. You won't.
Plus, Ryan's going solo, so this has to get crazy, right? You're going solo?
Oh, God.
Yeah, let's do
I'm
that.
going solo too, guys.
Right.
So
No fun.
you know what a crazy drinker
you're really crazy.
I am.
Yeah. Last but not least, of course, Rebekah McKendry is
Hi,
with us.
guys.
Hello, welcome.
I'll be hanging out in Texas with
No
my
one bring
tea.
any peanut beer.
No, nothing
Is that
clearly
away
at
from
all.
They actually make pecan beer, I've encountered, but not peanut yet. So, yeah.
Well, we have some fun events to report back from. Obviously, Ryan, I think you should kick it off because you were at the Overlook.
Overlook Film Festival.
Yeah, new location. Where is this
New
again?
location. They were in the heart of New Orleans.
Okay.
Right there in the French Quarter. And
Did the place it was like before you were in the hotel?
It was not a contained situation like the previous Overlooks in Oregon and at Estes Park. Everybody was pretty much put up at the Bourbon Orleans Hotel, which is right in the French Quarter. But all of the theaters were kind of scattered around the area, and they just broke it all up. And it started Thursday night. It ran for 4 nights, and I have to say it was a success. I think that I really missed the kind of claustrophobic confines and the communal vibe that came about from being under one roof in Oregon and being under one roof in Estes Park.
Those ones always felt like horror summer camp. Where like literally like you were watching films with this group and then you would go to have drinks and then you would see them at breakfast the next morning. It was
How has
just
no one done
literally
horror summer camp at the Friday 13th place? Like, how has that not happened?
Well, that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Insurance.
But
Rights
you and I will talk
licensing.
offline.
How we can make this happen.
And it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of films. We had Unfriended, Dark Web, and Upgrade playing there after their South by Southwest debut. But you had other films like St. Agatha and Puppet Master and Hereditary and Downrange and Wolfman's Got Nards, the Monster Squad documentary. There was just a lot of stuff.
Hey,
and then
Rob and I are in that.
Yeah.
and then around that, you had this immersive gaming experience as they've done in previous years. And
Did Bousman get involved in that this time?
No, it was produced by
Molly
Elfman.
Yeah, Molly Elfman, and then there were these 2 other guys that came up with the story. Molly produced it, and Ciara was the one who got caught up in all of that. So she's gotten to a point where they've built the game to counteract her and her friend Kara and her friend Rachel's gaming prowess.
Kara Mandel.
So, Kara Mandel. So it we learn. I kind of talked to a few people offline, and they're like, "So Ciara got into this? Have they got into that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're way behind it." I think Lee Wanell, who was in town for Upgrade, he texts me and he's like, "I found a treasure map. What do I do?" And I was like, "Well, that got solved 2 hours ago, Lee." He's like, "Oh, all right, never mind." But while people are playing the game, you can, go see films. There was a lot of interactive experiences. I did the Delusion VR experience, which was incredibly impressive. It was 35 minutes long, and it was like experiencing a Delusion live event, but you kind of, I would say that the experience was amplified by really great makeup effects and CG and stuff like that. I missed Alex Aja's Campfire Creepers, so I'm working on trying to get a private screening here for that. But everybody was saying that was a lot of fun.
That's a virtual reality, though.
That's
right?
a virtual VR. Yeah. I'm talking about VR.
Right. So you need the equipment to.
You
do
need
that
the
there,
equipment.
yeah.
Exactly. And there was a couple other ones that were there, but film-wise, I had kind of seen quite a bit already. That was already at South by and Sundance. But the one thing that I was really excited for was Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich.
Yes.
Yes. And, based on that title alone, you should know that tongue is planted firmly in cheek. This is the great part. Udo Kier was at the festival.
And did he give you a back rub?
He did not give me a back rub. He apparently took over Ian
Did he get more
Nicholson's-
wasted than Elric?
I
Because
only
we've
hope-
seen that.
We've seen that much more
Is he
wasted.
going to be at Texas again this year?
No.
Oh, damn.
No, I don't think so.
Not after last year, probably.
Wow.
I still have his cowboy pick he gave me. This is me as a cowboy. So, yeah.
Well, he came up to Ciara. She had her Bauhaus shirt, and he's like, "Bauhaus. I know Bauhaus. I'm German." And she was just like, "I love you." But Udo plays Toulon in the Puppet Master reboot, and it's a reboot that is aware of the events that happened 30 years ago in the Puppet Master movie. Mm-hmm. And in this one, it is a gathering of people who are fascinated by the massacre, the Puppet Master massacres, and they gather for like a little convention that's taking place at this hotel.
Like true crime aficionados.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
And they all come to the table with their own puppets that they bought on eBay, and so you've got all these people who have gathered, and then Barbara Crampton plays a police officer who was there for that first night.
Oh.
That's cool because of her connection to band.
Exactly.
I love that. That's such a
exactly.
neat link. Yeah.
And sure enough, the puppets start to come back to life, and they're all Nazis. And they start targeting, people that Nazis do not especially care for. And it becomes just a complete bloodbath while everybody is trapped inside this hotel.
Is the dialogue funny? Because I always like the dialogue he writes.
So just to give you guys a little bit of color, Craig Zoller, who did Brawl in Cell Block 9 and Bone Tomahawk, wrote this film. And, it's very much... It's funny because I kind of liken Zoller... he hasn't hit Tarantino level, but he's got that Tarantino rhythm.
The closest that's been
closest,
since then,
exactly.
Yeah, it feels exploitation.
It's own thing, but it's there.
It's definitely
winking
there.
too much, yeah.
Right, and I feel like this was his From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like something where he just wanted to deviate into pure exploitation horror cinema, and then he just let it all fly. And I talked to D'Alessandro, the producer, afterward, and he goes... This is an NC-17 through and through, and we're not going to change that.
Yeah, how are they going to do? Because the distro,
RLJ is going to release it.
Okay.
Yeah. And listen, it is wrong in so many ways. It's completely off color in its humor. It is in completely non-PC.
Yeah.
And I've seen a little bit of backlash online where people are like, you're rooting for the puppets. You do not root for the puppets whatsoever. What you are kind of relishing and reacting to is just the over-the-top graphic violence. As we have always reacted to in any kind of slasher movie or any over-the-top horror movie. When the villains kill their victims, we go, "Oh my God, that was incredible! Yeah. Look at it! Like the excess of gore and the makeup effects team did a fantastic job doing practical effects all the way through. The puppets are really well done. They're really well designed. So it doesn't
feel like a cheap movie. It feels like a real movie.
Yeah.
That's always my fear with movies like that. Once you get sequels, it's like, is it going to feel like a movie?
This is the best.
The last three have been pretty.
This is legitimately the best Puppet Master movie to come out of the franchise.
Did Charlie Band go to the screening, by the way?
Huh?
Was Charlie Band at the screening?
No.
Man, I figured he would be cheering this on because it's going to breathe life into like what used to be as well.
And listen, I mean, watching the film and watching these Nazi puppets take people out, obviously, I was just kind of like, there is something off about the film in terms of just being completely wrong in its body count and who they're targeting. And the thing is yes, the film is not woke by any means. Yeah. But I said, as long as I see the comeuppance delivered and, retribution is paid and people and these puppets, pay the price, I'm thrilled, know. And they kept it, from going way off track and being really offensive by, there's a Jewish character in the film, and he's got some of the best one-liners.
Yeah.
And he delivers some swift justice, which is pretty amazing. It also features one of my favorite on-screen kills in many a year.
Wow.
Actually, there are two. The audience loved one. I loved one. I love the one that came later down the road because I jumped out of my seat. I had no idea it was coming. They set it up in such a terrific way. I just did not see it coming. And Brian Collins, I'm sure I shattered his eardrum. He was like sitting in front of me, and I just was like, "Oh my God!" I screamed at the top of my lungs, just thanks to the pacing of the scene, the special effects, and the sound design. It just worked so fucking well.
Had this director done anything else we would have
They did it was two filmmakers. They did a film called Wither.
Oh, okay. I remember that. That was the Scandinavian Evil Dead, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
it was actually, it was not as exciting. Like, it felt kind of one note, but it actually had really good effects and some really good moments in it, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well done for a Puppet Master reboot. And listen, just go in, just to have fun. I mean, that's really what it is. And I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people afterward. And there was always that, we weren't skirting the issue at all. We were just like, well, listen, it's a Nazi. The bad guys are Nazis, and they did what Nazis do. And we all were like, yeah, but we feel good afterward because they all the puppets that were, that were in the kind of, that were in harm's way, they paid the price, and that's what we want. So it was good versus evil, and good kind of came out on top. But, it's like, you could just go in with this movie to have fun. It's a pure cult, sleazy, over the top midnight movie, and you just go in and have fun.
I feel like some movies, if you go in for political correctness, you're just fooling yourself.
Like a Trumba movie or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, really.
That's the thing. Like,
horror's meant to kind of push the envelope anyway with some of that at times, so
Yeah, but anyways. Puppet Master, Littlest Reich. That was the one I was like really excited to see for some reason. I was just like super stoked.
I could have cared less until that review just now, and also because I knew of whose name was attached.
Yeah.
How long do we have to wait for that, do you think?
I think it comes out in August.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, they announced it on the cusp of the premiere. So no, I'm really excited about that. Anything else stand out for you from the festival?
I saw Hereditary again.
Okay.
And it holds up really
none
well.
of us want to know. Did I tell this? When him and I saw Quiet Place, the trailer came on, Elric like freaked out right next to me. He covered his eyes and ears. He's like, no. So you avoided.
Oh, yeah, I did.
I don't know if any of it sunk into you, but you still have not
haven't
seen
even really seen an image besides the poster. I think that's the only image I've seen so far.
I've had
doing
about
pretty well.
10 people tell me about the opening scene.
Oh.
But yeah, that's all
Somebody
I know.
told me like dolls or something were being given away as part of advertising. It's like, I wonder what that's to do with. I'll have to, I don't know. Some sort of takeaway that was being given away to creep people out. I don't know.
I mean, like, I'm happy to say that the film still holds up, and I think if anything, there's a slight pacing thing, but I'm not going to knock a movie that's not even out yet. But it's still really, really well done. I was super excited to see it a second
When is
time.
that? That must be soon though now, right?
I think it's in June. June 8th?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That's coming soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Since we last did an episode, Monsterpalooza happened here in town.
Oh, yeah.
Which yet again was, it's still my favorite convention. Ryan, I know you were there, but I didn't see you at all because people kept running into you and then me or me and you, and we're like, oh, I saw Ryan here or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, reason being is because this convention is totally Comic-Con level busy now.
It got super big, didn't it?
It's really huge.
It got really big.
And there's something really encouraging about a convention that is specifically intended to celebrate the art of practical effects and monsters and things like that. To see it get as big as it's gotten, I mean, it's a pain in the ass to get into it on a Saturday, but it's pretty amazing. And there was
3 lines. It was like literally 3 rows deep just to get into the general admission line, and then the wait list line was just like up and around the block.
Wow.
It was crazy.
In other words, go on Friday night if you can. That's the best way to go. But I had a blast. I had a couple of panels there, but the event itself was great. And I saw, I love the museum. They always do a museum there. So every year it's basically because all the effects houses are out here, they kind of contribute some of their pieces or things from movies, memorabilia. And to me, I bumped into Rodman Flender, a friend of the show's who's been on and loves this stuff, and we did the museum together, and there was a great, like, of all things, a Suspiria display that recreates I don't know what you'd call it, the window
opening,
kill and hanging or whatever. That whole thing was there. So both him and I took photos, and he insisted, he's like, we must start the hashtag Suspiria selfie. And he's like, come on, do it too. That way it'll take off. And so we did. If you go on Instagram now, there are 2 photos hashtagged Suspiria selfie. It's just the 2 of us. It is not taken off by all means. We encourage
if
Suspiria
you have
selfie.
a photo with him.
With Suspiria selfie, that shit.
You should totally do that. But I stopped by the Vinegar Syndrome table.
Oh, yeah.
And man, did I unload and pick up a lot of stuff.
Did you get the new Liquid Sky?
I did get Liquid Sky.
Did you watch it yet?
Not yet.
Oh,
let's time it, because I haven't watched it yet either, and I have it at home.
I haven't seen it in like 10 years. But yeah, I would love to watch it again.
Somebody else needs to watch that one, because I love it, and I don't know why.
All
You're not alone. It's definitely a cult film.
Liquid Sky, it's a cool movie. I remember liking it. But so I've been watching a lot of their stuff.
Okay.
I have 2 things I picked up from them. The first, and I wouldn't even have known about this, but connecting to Puppet Master, somebody who's directed several of those films is David Dakota, who was on a show. While I was at the table, David walked by and said, you should buy this. And he pointed at something called Nightmare Sisters. And then walked away. And then I was like...
Brink Stevens in that?
Yes. And I was like, did he direct this? He's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, that's why. But sure enough, I was like, you know what? I've never heard of Nightmare Sisters. It's from 1988. It was directed by David Dakota. It was written by Kenneth Hall, who did the first Puppet Master. And so it's got Brink Stevens, Michelle Bauer, and Linnea Quigley. And so I'm like, sure, sold. So I pick it up, I bring it home, and this movie is so much fun. It is absolutely... if I was 12 and rented this from the video store, it would have been my favorite movie that summer. And basically, according to the special features, and I think it even says on the back of the box, they made this movie kind of, it's Roger Corman style, like kind of as it, like they had like 4 days and like they had some trims from some 35 millimeter. And so they're like, can you write something really quickly that just takes place in a house or whatever? And so the premise is that Brink Stevens, Linnea Quigley, and Michelle Bauer are sorority sisters, but they're total nerds. And it's really fun. Like Linnea's got really funny, like buck teeth in. Brink has got giant glasses and like her hair in like a ponytail. And so getting to see those girls play like nerdy girls. Michelle Bauer's
you're talking about like the kind of 80s,
80s nerds.
Yes,
like
that nerd.
Hot for Teacher.
Like
Van
Revenge
Halen
of the
music
Nerds,
video.
like to the 10th degree. Like Michelle Bauer's
Wendell.
like stuffed with like she's got, I don't know, she's wearing like a fat suit underneath or whatever. And so anyway, they're these really nerdy girls and they invite these nerdy sorority boys over one night. And basically, Brink collects a lot of weird stuff from an antique shop. So she breaks out a crystal ball. They do a seance. And out of nowhere, lightning comes out. And they become topless versions of the Scream Queens we know and love. Like literally out of nowhere, they are now super hot. They're super naked. And they are succubus. Their only goal now is to eat and devour boys. Nice. And so that is the type of movie you're getting. Nothing more, nothing less. It's really funny. And it's just that kind of over the top, like fun, geeky horror humor from the 80s. So I absolutely love this thing. And again, once in a blue moon, Vinegar Syndrome will hit us with this or like a Hobgoblins, just something that you're like, I can't believe this exists, but it's a blast.
I'm going to have to pick that up at Texas Frightmare.
I just
Nightmare
wrote that
Sisters.
down.
I'm looking
Are you looking at it?
I'm looking it up, and I remember I might have seen it on USA Up All Night.
It looks like the cover of Slime Ball from...
Yeah, that is the cover of Slime
that's
Ball.
what it was. He did it on the cusp of that. I guess whatever
So
he had
similar
left
kind
over
of
from
vibe.
that, he
Which
did
feels,
it.
because their sorority is the setup for Slime Ball as well. So
it's kind of a companion piece to that, but I forgot the best part. It also includes, it includes the TV edit, because when I say they are topless and naked for the second half of the movie, they are for like the whole thing. And so apparently according to the special feature, a year later, Dakota sold it to some TV thing. And so a completely year after the fact, he shot them in like nighting gowns or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And so that version where like it's a TV cut so it doesn't look as good, but that version where it obviously cuts to footage that's from a year later of all of them is all in that as
He
well.
made a lot of films.
He did.
My God.
He's made hundreds.
No, when you said he pointed at this movie and told me to buy it, I was like, talking cat
made it.
film?
Yeah.
He makes a lot, so I can't keep up with all his stuff.
Yeah.
God bless David Dakota.
I'll let you guys go. I'll do my other one.
Other Vinegar Syndrome ones? Or?
Well, I had a really cool experience. First I'll say, in between this and our last show, I went to Phoenix Film Festival.
All right.
Which was awesome.
No gun incidents or anything like that.
Yeah, your last
incidents.
one.
Oh, yeah. That was
That
at
was the
Phoenix
Comic-Con.
Comic-Con.
Oh, that was Phoenix Comic Con.
Yeah. No, this was Phoenix Film Festival. My film,
thank God.
All the Creatures was playing there. We had 2 screenings. We sold out both of them, which was
Nice.
awesome. So we drove down for the Saturday night screening. It was amazing. I met a bunch of Shockwaves listeners there. The Geeks Who Eat, who have done a ton of stuff for Blumhouse and worked with us a bunch at Blumhouse.com. They were there. And then Monty Yazzie, who's a big supporter
Yeah, Film
of
Bar, he programs stuff for
and he's also one of the main programmers for the Phoenix Film Festival. So he was there and hung out with us, and it was just awesome. So yeah, it was just a good night across the board. So that was last weekend. This weekend, on Sunday, they do this thing at Disneyland called Dapper Day. And on Dapper Day, you're supposed to get dressed up like you would if you were going to Disneyland in the 1950s. And I never missed a chance to wear vintage clothing, so I was like, hell yeah, let's get dressed up and go. Dave put on a bow tie, we're going. And
I was at Knott's Berry Farm when you were there, and all I was thinking is you're so like higher upper crust that you can afford
Upper
Disney
crust.
when I'm having to slum it at Knott's at a quarter of the price at Knott's.
I like Knott's. But yeah, so the family and I are rolling off the Jungle Cruise, and this guy walks up to me, and I mean, like, it's Dapper Day, so I'm wearing this 1950s dress, and I have my hair up in this like Audrey Hepburn bun, and I'm wearing sunglasses, and this guy walks up to me, and he goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here. I just had to come up and meet you." And I was like, oh my God, he thinks I'm somebody famous. He's like confusing me with somebody. And then he can see the confusion on my face, and he goes, "Becca, it's Ryan." And I was like, Ryan? And he goes, Ryan Larson. And I lost my shit.
Leader of our
And
group.
I hugged him, and he had a girl with him who he hadn't even introduced yet, and I hugged her too. And I was like,
Make sure you explain who that is to those who aren't familiar with the
Ryan
group.
Larson
Good time to introduce them.
runs the Shockwaves fan group on Facebook. What is the official?
The Shockwaves Horror Movie Club.
That's the one.
5,000 plus strong, so if you're not on there, get in there.
Yeah, and so Ryan Larson runs that. He created Ghastly Grinning, which is just a complete and total kick-ass horror website. And so just seeing him at Disneyland just made my flippin' day. Like, yeah, Disneyland's great. And all,
Next
but
time, Ryan, you might want to tell us you're coming to town. We could have slipped you in here.
I told him that. I was like, next time you are even remotely in Southern California, tell us and we will have you on the damn show.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was just amazing seeing him and meeting him, and he's just so sweet, and it was awesome by far.
That's
best
great.
part of my weekend. So yeah, but stuff I actually like watched. I know.
my lead-in.
This is my lead in. So I'll go with a graphic novel here. So I read all of Witches this week.
WY?
WY.
Yeah, I think I read the first one.
CHES. Yeah.
Yep.
I think they did 6 volumes.
With the teen girl who, yeah, I thought the first one was really cool.
Yeah, the first one is I definitely like. I loved up till 3, and then I'll talk about that. But yeah, so the whole setup of this is that the Rook family has moved to New Hampshire. The Rook family has moved to New Hampshire, and their daughter, who is a teenager sailor, is fighting with this bully, and then all of a sudden the bully kind of gets like zapped into this tree. And no one can find her. And all the kids at school start this rumor that Sailor killed her. And no one can figure out what happened to the bully. So there's this kind of like criminal investigation going on in the background. And what you find out is that there are witches, but they're not like witches as like most of us perceive witches as like, you know, women in the woods who do spells or anything like that. They're completely different. They're very creature-like. And even though it's unexplained in the first couple, there's this act where you can pledge somebody to the witches, where you literally kind of run up, smear them with this green goo, and then the witches will come and take them away.
Actually, when you say it like that, it sounds a little bit like that Pie Wacket film we were talking about.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like that too much, but some of that mythology of the trees and
the trees, like they definitely, the witches are much more kind of primordial and nature and creatures, and it gets a lot more into like trees and this goo and kind of, you know, the earthenness of witchcraft. And I absolutely loved it. The first one kept going. I think that it falls into the trap later on that a lot of graphic novels do, which is like when you create a graphic novel and present it to, in this case it was Image, like you're literally creating it for like 6 episodes or 6 comics. And so once it takes off and it's still going, like volume upon volumes later, you have to keep explaining the mythology to keep it running. So by like, I think it was probably the 4th book, I was like, don't tell me anymore. Like they keep explaining exactly what's going on and they keep getting further into the mythology, and then it lost kind of some of the mystery to me. But the first few, I was completely in love with it. This was slated for a movie in 2014 with
HBO.
Yeah, with HBO. Brad Pitt was supposed to produce it. I don't know whatever happened to it, but it would have made a kick-ass movie.
Were they supposed to do a follow-up or a sequel? I thought Image was supposed to do some sort of...
They did. They released, and I did not, I was reading about this, but I didn't read it. Like that there was a new a new version of it that was available, I want to say last August.
No, but like a whole new story. I thought there was like a whole... Really?
I think it already came out. As I was researching it, I was reading that there was some type of new edition. Either it was like a re-release or there was a new edition. I literally read like, I think it was the 6 volumes that were like the original part.
Why is it spelled with a Y?
Because they're not witches.
Oh.
They're witches. It's a little different.
How did I miss this?
Yeah,
it says,
it's
was a
out,
great
isn't
thought.
it? Didn't come out last...
Volume 2...
Yeah.
I thought we traded this around a little bit. I could be mistaken.
The first volume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
Shit, I'll have to
there's a
pick that up.
second.
Cool.
So that's Witches.
Nice. Elric.
I saw one of the biggest movies of the 1980s that I hadn't seen. A little movie called Demon Wind. I finally caught
still need to
Demon
watch
Wind. It's Imagine Evil Dead without any of the charm, and you have Demon Wind, exactly the movie in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies that I kind of enjoy. Parts lag big time.
Yeah.
Like really, the story is its weak point. The special effects are actually like what's cool about it is they're kind of closer to demons, like the movie Demons. It's like a little bit of Demons mixed with Evil Dead. I actually noticed Jeff Farley's name in the credits for special effects, a guy we all know. It's all the sequences with actual horror and gore are actually kind of fucking awesome, and everything in between is really bad. Like the characterization of the characters is just abysmal, like painfully, like, you know, not even by 80 standards, where it's like just random people keep driving up to this cabin and go, hey man, hey, how's it going? You're just, each one's a caricature. You're like, why do these people keep coming?
What doesn't one show up and then like they get in a fight and he like karate kicks him?
Yeah, he's got mad. That's one of the greatest scenes. This would be like the most gifable scene on earth. But one of the guys shows up and the other guy, the jock character's with his ex-girlfriend, and he gets out and he throws something up in the air. It's a gun or something, and then he does a double reverse karate kick, kicks it in the air, and it goes up in the air again. He kicks it like 5 times, and you're like, it's so absurd in the context of the movie, but it's that perfect WTF 80s vibe.
Yeah.
But I would actually really recommend it for that. I mean, there aren't many movies from the 80s that we keep getting to discover like this, but man, it definitely is something that where the drama really lags. I couldn't even tell you what's happening once they're in the cabin, but the basic setup is a guy who's lost his parents, goes to this cabin in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of cabin, a kind of house. At the start of the film, they give you a crazy backstory to it, and where some sort of the demons come when the wind comes, and they're trying to block it out. And basically, once they all enter the house, it's like the fabric of time and space changes around this little cabin. And every time they look outside, they're tempted to go outside by, I think one is a Playboy bunny who they hired to like be topless in fog. And then when you go out, she turns into a grotesque demon. But the actual effects really do look like demons, and I thought it was fun. Like, I'm glad I watched it. It's hard to overly recommend, but it's definitely a party movie.
I have a stack of stuff that I acquired at Frightmare last year.
Yeah. That would be
was that one?
And that was
no, because they put it out since, I think.
No. What I'm saying is that I still have a stack that I have not watched. Literally, the Texas. I literally have a set aside the Texas Frightmare stack,
like your Arrow stuff.
And I was just like, Jesus, yes. And that Demon Wind. I used to look at it every weekend, and I go, "Am I ready?"
I think you're ready. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a goofy, fun Friday night movie.
With people.
I watched it with Miller,
with pizza and beer.
Josh Miller, and with pizza and beer, and we just laughed because it became one of those movies where that we want to remake and actually put the cover on in the movie because the demon on the cover really isn't in
it. But there are some good demons.
I mean, it's an awesome cover.
Yeah. But it's also this one for those who don't want to like commit to that. Is it Vinegar Syndrome?
Yeah, they
don't want to commit to the purchase. It is also Amazon streaming, and it's HD. So I've actually found that's a really nice way to like see some of these in advance lately is on Amazon. I'll just throw this because it's super quick. My favorite movie of the year so far, so I want to plug it. It's about violence more than horror, but it's so fucking good. I want to make sure people see it, and that is the new Joaquin Phoenix, Lynn Ramsey film. You Were Never Really Here. It is superb, and what it does, it's really violent. It's kind of like Taxi Driver. It's got like a very thin story, but I think it's on purpose so she can really like push the character, and he's just an incredible, like, this is my kind of superhero movie. Like I like superhero movies almost as much as the next guy, but I much prefer a movie like this where it's about somebody who's also kind of suicidal and violent, and it's just a really intense movie. But what it does is it basically, and this is how you can, Lynn Ramsey, who's always been one of my favorite directors, she made, we need to talk about Kevin, Ratcatcher, Morven Callan. She's only made like one film every like 2 films a decade lately. But this film, I think in a way is one of my favorites because she's going diving into genre, and instead of making what could just be an action thriller, she basically takes all the action out, and anytime there's going to be an action, she just shows you the violence without action and makes it really brutal and swift, and it makes you just go, ooh, and sometimes she shows the after moment, so you miss the violence. And Joaquin, Joaquin in general, I just think he's like our Daniel Day-Lewis in this country, and he really is one of the great actors, and then might be one of his best things he's done, and after you watch it, there's Joaquin never talks about stuff he does, like, ever. I don't think he ever does interviews. Elvis Mitchell did he's got a show called The Treatment, 30-minute show. He has both the director and Joaquin on it on the new episode. So as soon as you watch it, it's worth listening to because it's pretty interesting how he's trying to live in the moment, and sometimes it leads to kind of crazy shit going down.
Well, Joaquin did on opening night. He went to all the Q&As. He went to all the Q&As,
which tells you what he thinks about this movie, because this is a guy who does not do this shit.
That was exciting.
Likes this movie, and it's really dark and violent. So it's not like it's not horror. It's it's not a horror film, but man, it's like I loved it. I was like, it just shows how when a director, kind of like with Raw or even Revenge, I feel like you find somebody who is going to focus on things. You've seen these movies a million times, but if a new director comes to it who hasn't done something like that before, they just find these weird little moments they put in. This has a lot of fractured memories and stuff, and man, it just makes the movie. So anyway, I highly recommend that one for anyone because it probably won't be in theaters very long. I would bet it's already been there about 2 weeks. So.
I want to check it out.
Nice.
Well, I wanted to mention a follow up with the one other film that I watched this week that kind of ties into a certain level of darkness, and I haven't seen Angel Heart from 1987
Love that movie.
since high school.
Okay, good.
And the exploration of seeing it in high school is just because I wanted to see Lisa Bonet do dirty things, and now an older gentleman watching Angel Heart. My God, what a great fucking movie this is!
Such a good fucking movie.
Alan Parker's just a great director.
Parker. The bomb. And the reason why I kind of...
twists that still get you? Like, even now you can watch it and you'd be like, I forgot.
So
and I still
gnarly.
watch it and notice things that I didn't notice before, like the subtlety that they include in the background and the texture and how some of
that
the
should be a
motifs
Criterion
are worked
film.
in.
It really
It really should.
Yeah,
The soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah. It's really, really solid.
It's been a few years for me, too, so I got to
You should
go back.
revisit
I'll probably
it.
love seeing it again.
Grady Hendrix mentions it in his the novel Falling Angel and Paperbacks from Hell, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen that movie in forever. And then we were getting geared up to go to New Orleans, and so we're like, let's watch Angel Heart. But if you guys don't know what it's about, Mickey Rourke plays a private detective named Harry Angel, who's been hired by Robert De Niro's Louis Cypher.
Louis Cypher.
Well, he pronounces it like all French and stuff.
Cypher.
And Robert De Niro corrects him. And he's like, no, it's Cypher.
Oh.
And he keeps pronouncing it that way. But they basically he hires him to track down this singer named Johnny Favorite because he owes a debt to De Niro. And Harry Angel kind of goes down this dark investigation, which leaves like a trail of bodies in his wake. And he's like basically following the breadcrumbs, all these people who have either worked with Johnny Favorite or have, been intimate with him. And you've got Lisa Bonet, you've got Charlotte Rampling, Pruitt Taylor Vince has a little bit in it. But man, it's just like pure, mature, atmospheric adult horror. Like just really great performances, really heavy themes, and it's just like a very thoughtful horror film.
And pretty Mickey. Any movie with pre beat up by boxing Mickey, like this is like pretty Mickey Rourke back in the day.
Yeah. But he still feels edgy as well. So yeah, this one, it's just got some beauty. Like I remember a scene with a woman singing while she's playing in the shore at Coney Island. Like there's just such cool ways to film people.
I mean, like basically he's going from New York to Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why you watch it? Because you were in New Orleans?
Yes, cool. And it was just fantastic just to see just the landscape. I mean, it's set in the 1950s, and it's just like all of the colorful characters he meets along the way, and because Johnny Favorite is rooted in the kind of Southern music scene, it's just like such rich music. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. And then there's just like it beats you in the fucking head with a hammer at the very end.
Yeah.
And you're just
when
like,
you find out that he's Soylent Green. Other spoiler, different movie.
But I mean, like, listen, look beyond the non-subtle nature of everybody's names in the film, which kind of like broadcast things way ahead and just go for the ride.
Yeah, I feel like this is like there should be a list of those movies that are like this and Jacob's Ladder. Those movies that are just like amazing to come back to if you haven't seen them in a while, and they're all psychological horror. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. So I just added it along with something. Wes Craven presents Don't Look Down.
What's Don't Look Down?
I don't know, but I added it to my. It's on Prime as well.
I feel like we should have a show where we're just looking at computers and talking about what we're seeing.
What
we're just like, hey, I'm scrolling.
I found Don't Look Down.
Yeah. Let's see. My last thing was also from Vinegar Syndrome. I picked up Graduation Day from 1981, which I believe you talked about many. Yeah,
it was a while back.
Many eons ago.
Is that the one that opens with like the running?
I think I texted you. Yes, it opens at a track meet, and it is the way it is edited by a schizophrenic on cocaine.
Right.
Because it is the most exciting, fast-paced track race I've ever seen in my life, and then it ends with, and this isn't a spoiler because it's the opening scene. It literally ends with the girl that pushes herself so hard she wins, and then has a heart attack and dies at the cross line. And so then it's like, dum, now it's graduation day. So we fast forward to that, and somebody is knocking off in spectacular Friday the 13th fashion all the other people on the track team. Including the very suspicious, what's his name? Christopher George.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Of Pieces fame.
And
who is
City of the Living Dead.
City of the Living Dead. He's the coach, and then there's like a mysterious woman that comes back into town in the opening sequence. It turns out to be the dead girl's older sister. So, then she might be a red herring. So there's all these like red herrings and stuff.
I get this one mixed up with Final Exam, not because the stories aren't anything alike, but just the setting.
That's why I always get it pretty much the same thing. And Linnea Quigley had a bit part in this as well. So it's not great, but it's not bad either. It's just it was just a fun, straightforward slasher from that perfect period of the early 90s.
Like we always say, it doesn't matter. You have to watch it from that period.
It
Late
is.
80s,
There's
90s,
something about it. There's a couple cool kills, but really it was mostly about the editing. Like it's cut together in such a frenetic way that it stood out to me. I was like, this is just insane.
Yeah.
And I think I texted you. I was like, do you remember Graduation Day?
I remember the reveal,
track
too.
meet and the way this is edited.
I just remember the cover. I don't think I've actually seen it.
This is Vinegar Syndrome. I picked this up from them as well. It's one of their early releases, so I picked this up for them.
Very cool.
But super cool. I really enjoyed this film. So
I got two more that I will throw out quickly. So I watched The Corpse of Anna Fritz. Have you guys heard of this one?
That's on Shudder, right?
It is on Shudder.
Exclusive, I haven't seen it.
And it is from 2015. It's a Spanish film directed by Hector Hernandez Vikins. And the setup, I was worried that it was going to be just like Dead Girl, and the setup is similar, but it goes really interesting places, and actually the setup feels a little bit different. So this famous actress dies. And it's three guys come up with this idea that they want to be the last people in the world to ever have sex with her. And so, I know. While she's dead. So, no, she's dead in the morgue. This famous actress has died.
Oh, boy.
I know. And I couldn't believe I was continuing to watch this because it's such an ugly setup.
Necromantic
The Corpse
style.
of Anna Fritz.
The Corpse of Anna
Add it to my
Fritz.
queue. Or maybe not.
So,
Am I adding it or not?
I actually enjoyed it. I will say it's ugly and it's brutal, and there were moments where I was like, "Why am I still watching this?" But it goes a really interesting place.
That guy
not
hated
like
these
Dead
characters.
Girl. You did?
I hated them.
I did. Okay, I hated them, but they get their comeuppance.
What'd they ever do? What'd they ever do? Fuck a corpse.
Oh no, they're terrible, terrible people.
Worse than the Dead Girl guys, because they're pretty awful.
And that's how it pivots. And it feels like Dead Girl, where you're just waiting for something to happen to these awful characters, and it goes in an interesting place. So it was not by any means it's not going to be in my top 10 of what I saw this year, but I was still fascinated enough to continue with where it went.
Do they address rigor mortis during the act?
I believe so.
Visitor Q does.
It's a brisk 74 minutes.
It's a brisk, it's only 74 minutes long, guys.
It is free on Shudder, so I guess I could watch it. If I watch the first 10 minutes, will I get hooked by that, or is that not enough?
You're going to want to keep going because that's just the actress dying and setting up how what her fandom is and everything. But I will say,
all right, Shudder, I might try this.
Ultimately, without giving reveals, it does pivot to the rape revenge film. But that's when I'm suddenly okay, now I'm in because these three horrible characters.
Ryan's not having any of it. If you could see his face.
I had a very vocal reaction to this film when I watched it, and I was just like, this isn't a story I wanted to see told.
The first third is ugly.
It's
ugly. But then I liked where it went from there.
Becca watches Go-Go Second Time Virgin, so she's edgy.
Edgier. So,
she's edgy.
Yeah. But then the last one I'll talk about is a complete left turn from that one. The Nightwalker, which is from 1964.
Looks cool.
This is William Castle, completely unlike anything William Castle. So he made this after House on Haunted Hill, after The Tingler. Everyone was like, okay, we need another gimmick. And he was like, no, I'm going to give you this thing. And it's neither funny nor campy. It has no gimmick to it. He got a screenplay by Robert Bloch, which he saw as the big selling point, and it stars Barbara Stanwyck. And the whole setup is that there is this blind gentleman, and he believes that his wife is cheating on him. And he becomes so kind of preoccupied that his wife is cheating on him. He's got like the whole house is tape recorded. And she is living in like this constant state of fear and paranoia and anxiety because you don't really think that she's cheating on him at the beginning, but she's just constantly on edge and he's really possessive over her. And she starts having these absolutely, absolutely horrible nightmares. Well, he's a scientist and there's this crazy explosion in his lab and he dies. And so she's now left by herself. She moves out of that house, starts a whole new life, and starts having these crazy, trippy nightmares. And they start bleeding into reality where you never know what's real or what's not. And she starts questioning, was she really cheating on him? Who are these people? Why is she seeing these weird mannequin faces? Like they use mannequin faces in it a lot, and they're terrifying. Why is she seeing all these weird faces in her reality? She questions.
Are there secret desires in it?
Yes. Why, yes, there are
cool.
secret desires.
Are
you reading the cover?
He's looking at the cover.
The poster promised me secret desires,
there are
question mark.
Secret desires. And it's actually, as like you keep kind of preempting what you think the twist might be, and I did not see it coming.
I've got, Brian lent me the Blu-ray of this one that's just sitting on my thing. I
want to check it out.
Yeah, it's
Factor.
What was the one you talked about as well? You talked about one, the Curtis Harrington one recently with the blood thing in the sky. What was that thing called?
Wait, what again? The House that Dripped Blood or no?
No, you talked about one at Chattanooga.
House of Long Shadows.
It was one you talked about with an alien thing and a heart thing.
Time Walker.
Time Walker. Those two are Nightwalker and Time Walker are two I love.
Yeah.
So Nightwalker.
Double feature, guys.
It's easy to get confused.
It's really trippy. It's very hard boiled because it really does become kind of a detective thing to figure out what's going on, and it definitely is really slow. But I was fascinated by this. Like I wanted to see the whole time where it was going because it does have this kind of detective angle of, well, who's this guy? What's going on? What do all these characters mean? This did not perform well for Castle. Like it definitely was not a good performing movie for him. So I think that this is kind of now we're just suddenly going, he did this movie called The Nightwalker. But yeah, it was a fascinating watch. Slow. Don't expect it to move really fast.
Alrighty. I'm fascinated by stuff that Block wrote.
Yeah,
really quickly, just to throw out there, because they're not exactly genre, but they're sort of in the wheelhouse. I recently got a bunch of stuff from my friend Mark Ward at RLJ.
Yep.
So I'm checking out some of his back catalog, and one of them was the Paul Schrader movie Dog Eat Dog.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Oh, yeah, you
I haven't seen it yet. No, and I usually see Schrader movies straight away.
Willem Dafoe and
Nick Cage, baby.
Ryan's.
Yeah.
If you're watching video.
This is the problem with having a video because when I'm silent, I'm shaking my head.
He's shaking his head right now. Why are you shaking your head? This is at Beyond. Did you see it at Beyond Fest?
Yeah, I thought the movie was terrible.
Really? I had fun with it.
Turek's just all critical today.
Almost unwatchable.
I don't think it's unwatchable. I think it's kind of out of control and pretty fun.
I did hear
There's some
Schrader
really
tried to
weird
make
shit.
it like purposely tried to do like camera moves that he had never done before, so he tried to make it purposely crazy.
Right.
Because his next film, the one with Ethan Hawke that's getting all the buzz.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently it's like the people say it's the best thing he's made in his career. It's a horror thing.
I hope so. And I think he's already kind of written this one off. Maybe. I thought I read an
Who's
article.
crazier, to Defoe or
It's because
Cage?
Turek called it like
crazier.
unwatchable.
No, Defoe is by far.
Okay, because I heard they actually switched roles. Maybe that was the thing. Yeah.
It is over the top, the most bizarre and crazy Willem Dafoe's been on screen in quite a while, and he's done some weird shit on screen. So,
and we will be asking Cage about it when he's in here for Mandy later in the year. Turek has promised me.
We can hope.
He made a commitment to me that we will get Cage.
A little more classier than Dog Eat Dog, and so I want Ryan to wave yes for once. I've been on a Hitchcock kick lately, and so I've been trying to fill in blankets in his filmography. He's got so many movies, and so Warner Archive did a sale recently, and they've got a couple of his pretty obscure ones. So I watched a movie called I Confess from 1953 with Montgomery Clift. Great premise. It's actually... I find something to love about every Hitchcock movie, so I think it's really good, but I understand why this one isn't as talked about as a lot of his other ones, because it's good, but it's not like super strong. But the premise is amazing, which basically in the opening, a gentleman comes into a church and confesses murder to a priest. And now the priest is the main suspect to the police, and he can't tell them because he can't break his oath to God of the confession booth. And so the whole thing is about, this priest trying to figure out, how do I not tell who really did it and at the same time clear my own name? So, I mean, right off there, that just sounds like a typical Hitchcock premise. And Montgomery Clift is really great in it. I just thought it it was a really interesting pocket in his career that I don't hear a lot of people talk about.
There's a great story about that.
I think Bogdanovich is on the bonus features. It's one of his favorites. So.
Yeah, there's a story because Hitchcock wasn't really known. I mean, he hired good actors, but he wasn't really known as an actor's director. But there's a story where Clift could not do a scene where he has to run out of the church and there's all these people, and then he has to look up at a clock. And every time he did it, he wouldn't look up at the clock, and he was really struggling. And he kept saying to Hitchcock, like, Hitchcock's wondering what's wrong. He's like, well, what's my motivation to look up? Because I've got all these people. I want to look at them. Why the hell would I look up at a clock? And Hitchcock looked at him and goes, because I'm paying you. And that is the only motivation he could give his actor. And I'm like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very cool. Anything else from anybody else?
All I'll say is I finished, so I taught a genre class this semester where I showed things like Manhunter and The Fly and all this crazy stuff, and I ended the semester talking about how a director can be a genre unto themselves. And I ended with Mulholland Drive, and when I turned on the lights, I saw students looking at me like a couple like they wanted to kill me, a couple with their minds like expanded to like none of them had seen. One kid had, but it was so fun to watch. But what I was reminded of, because I hadn't seen it in a few years, I just reminded how certain sequences of that are, like Lost Highway 2, are scarier than anything anyone else is directing.
Yep.
His ability in one sequence to be funny, like you have a comic sequence with the guy shooting people accidentally, and then you'll have a scene like the nightmare behind the dumpster, and you're like, that is behind Winky's, and you're like, that's the scariest single scene I think ever filmed.
Nightmare fuel.
And so it's just so much fun to watch people and not knowing his work.
I always show the Club Silencio.
Oh yeah, Silencio's amazing
because that is like the scariest thing ever filmed.
I like
how he literally plays a joke on the audience because you forget everything that he told you within 10 minutes.
What I will say though, because I've seen this maybe like 3 or 4 times now over my life, but what I realize about the way he makes movies, and it's really interesting, is there's actually no, how usually it's like, oh, you'll get more the second time. No, it's literally impossible to get all of this story information, because what they do, there's a certain thing with a key and a scene that happens before. Scenes are actually out of order, so you would actually have to see it a second time to really feel it in the moment. Otherwise, you're only like piecing it together. So the more you watch that movie, the more you'll start to get, oh my God, I never knew that. And I can't obviously spoil it. I would love to go into a spoiler tear on this one now that it's in my brain.
I don't think you can spoil it.
Yeah.
But we'll talk.
But anyway, I just want to remind people that that's a film, even if you've seen it, might be fun to revisit.
And I don't even know if the article still exists online, but a couple of years ago, my husband Dave on Blumhouse.com did a literal kind of play-by-play of here's what it means, and here's all of the breadcrumbs that are dropped throughout the entire thing. And it's obviously nothing but spoilers, but if you've seen it and you really want to like follow the breadcrumbs the whole way through, it's really extensive.
I just love the cowboy. He's like, if you see me one more time and you do good, but if you see me 2 more times and you're like, uh-oh, what does that mean?
No.
The amount, when I first came to Hollywood, I remember somebody joking about Mulholland Drive. Like, that's what Hollywood is. And I never believed it. And the amount of times that I have left pitch meetings and this is the girl. And had that and been like, okay, well, it looks like we're casting blankety blank, and then Dave will look at me and go, this is the girl.
Oh, yeah, I think all of that stuff is based on, I even think the funny audition scene is based on Lynch. You like the weird direction that the director gives, like, don't make it real till it gets real. Like, I think a lot of that's coming from who he is in the goofy way. But anyway, great movie. And we have a really solid show coming up now.
Yeah, we've got guests here, so let me grab them.
Tonight's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by the upcoming horror movie The Endless. Brad Misket Bloody Disgusting says it's strange, bizarre, twisted, manipulative, and completely original. Everything horror fans keep begging for. Acclaimed filmmakers Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson return from their 2014 cult hit Spring with this mind-bending supernatural thriller about 2 brothers who revisit the UFO death cult they escaped as teens, only to find there may have been truth to the cult's otherworldly beliefs all along. In theaters now from Wellgo, USA. Check for showtimes, theendless-movie.com. And keep checking the Shockwaves Facebook page because we'll be giving away some awesome merch and copies of The Endless, soon including a limited edition blacklight poster and copies of the Blu-ray. It's a really fun movie. Go see it.
Today's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by Shudder. Brought to you by AMC Networks, Shudder is not only a premium streaming video service, but an experience unlike any other. Created for fans of all degrees of thriller, suspense, and horror, Shudder is home to the largest and fastest-growing human-curated selection of high-quality, spine-tingling, and provocative films, TV series, and originals. And there's always something new and unexpected for Shudder members to explore. Premiering only on Shudder this week is Downrange, the new film from the director of Versus and The Midnight Meat Train.
Stranded at the side of a road after a tire blowout, a group of friends become targets for a mysterious sniper. From director Yuhei Kitamura, Downrange is an incredibly suspenseful, fantastically violent, and masterfully tense thriller from one of horror's most unique filmmakers. Watch Downrange today, streaming only on Shudder. Shudder is available for $4.99 a month or $49.99 with an annual membership, but our listeners can get a free month by entering promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of thrillers, suspense, and horror available to stream anywhere.
The Shockwaves team is heading to Texas Frightmare next week, and we hope to see everybody there. Texas Frightmare is the Southwest's premier horror convention, and it's now celebrating the 13th year. They always have the best guests, the best panels, and you don't want to miss it. The Shockwaves team will be there moderating a lot of events, plus we'll be hosting Dead Right Horror Trivia, and we'll be doing a live Shockwave show on Sunday at 1 p.m. Other guests include Misha Barton, Clive Barker, and several of the Cenobites, including Doug Bradley, all the kids from It's Losers Club, Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, Ron Perlman, Charlie Band, Brad Dourif, Katie Featherston, and more. Head to TexasFrightmareWeekend.com and get your tickets now. We will be selling Shockwaves t-shirts there. We're going to have a booth. Ryan in the Blumhouse team is bringing awesome Blumhouse stuff.
I'm bringing posters for Halloween.
What?
Guys.
We got Halloween posters.
I got a big box of Halloween posters.
Save one for me, baby.
Hell yeah. So we've got all types
let's
of
not
merch
forget,
coming.
Touch Elric's face.
And you can touch Elric's
And
face.
I might be wearing a Michael Myers mask.
Because
when you touch my face.
well, I'm rubbing up on your face right now.
I'm expecting Elric to just bring hand sanitizer and just be constantly dousing
I did not get
his
sick
face.
from the face touches at Chattanooga, so I am okay.
That is amazing. So come to Texas Frightmare, hang out. It's going to be an awesome weekend. Touch Kane's face.
I am very excited for today's guest. We have Brad Fuller from Platinum Dunes. Brad and I know each other from my time being a journalist back in the Fangoria days and back in the Shock Till You Drop days, and you were always super kind to me and giving me some cool exclusives and letting me hang out on set, so I appreciate that. But now that I'm on the other side, it's super cool to call you a colleague now that we're collaborating on The Purge. The Purge TV show.
It's a lot. It's a lot to do.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. There is this business.
What is all this madness?
It is nuts.
We are outsiders. We don't
Yeah,
know this
fill us
TV
in on
show.
everything, guys.
Get out of here.
But the timing was good because I saw A Quiet Place at South by Southwest, and this was about a month before the film actually opened, and I hit up Brad and said, hey, why don't you come on the show? And now we are here 2 weeks after we released.
3 weeks.
And this thing has surpassed $100 million, $130 million.
And it went to number one, got knocked off, and went back to number
Yeah.
one, which
Yeah.
never
Hold on.
happened.
Has that ever happened before? That's
That I don't
crazy.
know. I mean,
Scream might have done that.
yeah, I know it's unusual. No,
Yeah.
I mean, everything about this movie is fairly unusual.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you,
No,
Ryan. It's nice to see you again.
This is really cool. Now, before we get into Platinum Dunes and its history, I want to talk about a little bit about A Quiet Place because I didn't do a deep dive into the interview process in terms of reading where it came from, what the development process was like. I heard things about Cloverfield, all these things that I didn't know what to believe. So can you just talk about a little bit of how the thing got off the ground?
Sure, let's get into that. We get a lot of horror scripts.
Yeah.
And I think that specifically in the last couple of years, really since the first Purge, the Purge opened a lot of doors for our company in that it showed us that the concept is so important. And if the concept is a great concept, that you can build a great movie around that. And I think before that, we as a company felt like we just want to get a lot of remake rights. And that's what we did for 10 years. We got a lot of remake rights, and that was a great way to learn how to make horror movies. But after doing that for 10 years, we decided we didn't want to just remake other people's movies. We wanted to have our own, and we were very grateful to Jason for bringing us the Purge script, and that, as I said, that showed us what a concept and how important a concept is. When the script of A Quiet Place came in, it was 67 pages long because there was no dialogue. And of those 67 pages, 5, 6, 7 of those pages just like had one word on it, or the number 1, or a map of the farm. And Drew, my partner, I have 2 partners, Michael Bay and Andrew Form, but Drew and I both read the script at the same time. William Morris called us and said, we have a great script for you, and we think that this is an interesting idea. And we read it, and we looked at each other and we said, this is a silent movie. This is, how are we going to make a silent movie?
Yeah.
And the more we thought about it, it felt like it was the exact right thing to do to get people into the theaters and watch the movie. Because at the same time, that's the other battle that we feel like we're waging is, how do we get people to go see movies in movie theaters? There's nothing wrong with watching a movie on Netflix or any other place, but what we want to do is we want to have a communal horror experience. So when the script came in, it just felt like it lent itself to amazing storytelling, and it felt like it would be a much more elevated horror movie than what we had done in the past. So we immediately we have a deal at Paramount, and we took the movie to Paramount, and luckily Mark Evans, who was the president of Paramount at the time, saw in it what we did, and he bought the script. And I mean, so you asked the question, how did we get it? That's how we got it. Yeah. I can get into other things about it, but that's how it happened.
How did Krasinski get involved?
Okay, so this is a more bizarre story. So we are making a television show for Amazon called Jack Ryan.
Yeah.
And we cast John as the lead in Jack Ryan. And getting John to do the show was a huge get for us. And I think part of the reason that we got him is that we had a vision for the show, and we had some time to really get to know one another, Drew, John, and myself. And it started becoming just a daily thing that we would FaceTime with John and talk about Jack Ryan and talk about whatever. And the conversations started getting a little bit more broad about not just the show, but what are you doing after the show, or what is it? And we just liked John. He's incredibly intelligent, likable. He's just a great guy. And so one day we were on the phone with him, and he said, I'm not really sure what I want to do after Jack Ryan. And we said, well, we just got this script, and there's a role of a dad, and it's a great role. And why don't you just read it and tell us if it's something, would you do a genre film? I mean, is that something you're open to? And he said, well, probably not, but send it to me. I got nothing to do. And so we sent him that script, and John called us back a week later, and he said, guys, I have great news for you. And I said, what? He says, I'll play the dad. I said, okay, great. He goes, and I'm going to rewrite the script. I said, you are? You really? And he said, yeah, and I'm going to direct the movie. And we said, I mean, we were kind of flummoxed. Now, we'd gotten to the point in our relationship where we all trusted each other. He has great creative instincts. But it's not a natural jump to go to John Krasinski directing a horror movie. I mean, there's nothing that you can point to and say, this is why he should do the movie. But after hearing his take on the script and what he wanted it to be, and the value of the interactions between the family, and how the way he wanted to cast the movie. And we didn't have Emily at this point. We were talking about some other actresses for about a minute. And Drew and I wanted to be very respectful, because we didn't want to say, John, don't be an idiot. Your wife should play this role, because that's not our place. Because his wife, they have their own relationship. I don't want, So we just kind of, Drew and I would look at each other and say, hopefully maybe Emily will read it and like it. And in the meantime, we started going down a road, or not really, John, we were talking about names. And you didn't ask this, but one day John was flying to L.A. to pitch, because they live in New York. John and Emily live in New York. They fly to L.A. to pitch the movie to the executives at Paramount. And this is the room that Drew and I are walking into to convince Paramount Pictures to give us a lot of money for a guy who's never directed a horror movie to direct a horror movie. And John comes in, and literally we're walking into the office, and he looks at us and he says, oh, by the way, guys, Emily read the script on the plane. She wants to do it. Is that okay? Yeah, that's going to work out. And so he goes into the room, pitches the story, pitches exactly the way he wants to do it, ends the pitch with, and by the way, we have our lead actress, and it's Emily Blunt. And it literally feels from that moment on that we've made a lot of movies, that this was a movie where the wind was at our back and pushing us ahead the whole way through. I mean, it was one of these, we can get into it, but it was one of these magical experiences making the movie.
Well, did he take you into like his thinking, his thought process in that week time that he had the script all to himself? Did he kind of...
Yeah, what was it that hooked him? Yeah. That he became so passionate to take such an active role in all the aspects of it?
Yeah, and I'm intrigued how he changed it from kind of what the original incarnation was.
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, to answer your question about how, what did he respond to? I think that John had just become a father for the second time, and he was spending a lot of time with his daughters, both of them, but an infant. And the notion of a father protecting his family felt very, very real to him. And how do you protect your family when there's shit going on elsewhere? And, you know, what is a father's role in that? And I think that he knew it was a horror movie. He knew that there had to be scary parts about it, but the important thing to John was the relationships between the family and the characters, and he felt that if you love those characters, so you asked what did he change? He added little things like the sand paths. John came up with the sand paths. I have to go back to the drafts. I hope I'm saying that right, but I think that he came up with the sand paths. And John, after he read the script, he said to us, we're hiring a deaf actress to do this. We're not going to – it's not fair for us to hire an actress to play deaf. I want the actress to be deaf, and I want that to inform her character, and I want that to inform my character. And if I'm working with someone who isn't deaf, it's not going to be authentic. And the actress that we got, Millicent, that was the only person John wanted. It's not like we had a list of actors. It was everyone in this movie was the first choice to act in the movie. There's only 4 roles, but that was it. And so John added stuff like that to the movie, a lot of character stuff. He made that silo scene his own. That was in the script, but he changed that a little bit. And I have to go through it all, but it was really it feels like a very personal film when he was done with what he was writing, and it also felt like from the moment in the original script I didn't feel as much as I did when I read John's version, that from the moment Emily has her first contraction, that it's nonstop into the last second. I felt like that pacing was something that John really worked on and figured out how to make it great.
First cut, your first time seeing the first cut. I mean, what was your reaction?
One of the worst experiences of my life. Now, you hear that from every producer. The first cut's always the worst. I'm telling you, we had a horrible experience, and I'll take you through it. So, on this movie, it was a relatively low budget movie, and in our past we have made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, so we have some information about how you do a CG character. And when you do a CG character, there are 2 things that you do. First of all, you'll shoot the scene with someone in a motion capture suit, which looks like really lame, funny-looking pajamas with dots on their heads. So you shoot the scene with the actor playing the CG character, and then you clear them out of the frame, and then you shoot just a blank plate. And that gives ILM the ability to put your whatever you're trying to create in there. And there were times in the shoot of the movie where John put on the suit and played the character, the alien. Yeah. And you could see it was John, So the studio wanted us to test the movie, which I always dread and I always learn from. It's like the worst and the best thing because you're always overlooking stuff. And when you put the movie in front of strangers, you really learn what your movie is. Yeah. But we put our movie in front of strangers with John Krasinski playing that alien. And it was unbelievably uncomfortable. And the thing you
about a father terrorizing his children.
Yes. Exactly. So a scene that works so well in the movie, it was the scene where Millicent is in the cornfield and the alien's behind her. It's the first time you register what's going on with her hearing aid and the alien.
First big scare, it's a good
But
scare.
in the movie, it wasn't John. It was another guy in a motion capture suit that's kind of dancing around, and the audience has no idea how to figure out what's happening. You can't make that connection until you put the effect in there. So the first time we watched this movie, I think Paramount never said it. They were great partners, and I really mean that. They were great partners, and they were supportive the whole way. But they had to, when we left the room, they had to say, we're totally screwed on this movie because you couldn't see what it was. And by the way, something else that I just thought of something that John did is that there are a couple shots in the movie where you actually go into the alien's ear and you see that was all John, and that perspective part and the whole sound design was our sound design team and John working on what we created for Millicent was an envelope, and that was what she heard, and I think that that's a very compelling part of telling her story, and John came up with that as well. So I wanted to come back to that. But so the first screening was awful, and none of us knew what we had. And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier before we started taping this. The first time any of us saw the movie in its entirety with mixed sound was at South by Southwest. It wasn't like at by Southwest that afternoon. It was in front of 1,200 people with 25 critics in the room, and you have no idea what you have. I mean, it could have been a disaster. I literally, in the middle of that screening, I was so stressed out. I got up. Thank God they had a bar in the theater, and I went and I had 2 shots of vodka because I was freaking. I mean, I just didn't know. It was terrifying.
Wow.
But that's the answer to the question.
Well, the day that we're recording this, Paramount was having their presentation at CinemaCon, and they announced Quiet Place 2. So obviously, we're not in the scoop game here, but congratulations on that. I mean, are you guys...
Those listening are.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Obviously, this feels like a natural choice. I mean, the movie is doing gangbusters. So, how do you feel? I mean, are you going clean slate? Do you know any direction in which you're going, or is it? I mean, obviously, it's been conversations, or is this still relatively fresh?
Very fresh.
Yeah.
Really, the conversation about doing a sequel is this week's business. I mean, we didn't talk about it before this week.
Yeah.
First of all, John's not in L.A. We all haven't been in the same room where we can actually look at each other and talk about it. I have no idea what the idea is going to be. I don't know if John's going to direct the movie or not. I don't know who's going to write it. I just think that this is a world, though, that lends itself to seeing other people's stories of how they've dealt with this, or how did the aliens get here is certainly something to consider. Or you stay with Emily and see what happens. I mean, there are places to go, it feels like.
You guys created a world.
Right.
You can go forwards, backwards.
But I can tell you that, Ryan, if you would have said to me 2 months ago that we created a world, I didn't even know if we created anything. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really know that you do that until the audience tells you that you've done that.
Exactly.
It's so hard for me to believe that this is directed by a first-time director, because the thing besides the heart, which it's full of, that we walked away from saying, like, this is one of the best suspense pictures. Forget horror, but as suspense, like, this is Hitchcock vein.
Well, yeah,
suspense,
I've been talking. We were talking Hitchcock before he came on, and it's like this is the sort of that gimmick, the idea of would have been something he would have.
Oh, he would have loved
Oh,
it.
relished.
yeah,
Idea. I'm like,
it's the briefcase under the desk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because my favorite class in college was the Hitchcock class, and although I think that John certainly did his homework in terms of the other movies in the world, he did his homework about that. In some ways, I feel like because it has so much heart and it's so emotional, he kind of has created his own thing here, where it's not just a thriller, or
you're right, because Hitchcock's not known for emotion.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we usually don't have a lot of heart invested in his films.
Right.
So you're right, and I think that ups the stakes with the suspense. So you're taking the suspense and upping it. Yeah, no, it's just pretty amazing to think he hadn't made films.
Well, he did.
As a director.
Just to be clear, he made 2 films before this, but they weren't horror movies.
Oh, the comedy. That's right. Yeah,
and The Haulers especially has fantastic performances across the board. I mean, everyone, and I think that John cares so much about the level of acting, and obviously his wife brings it. So I mean, everyone was demanding the best of everyone else, and we've had a couple experiences, Purge being one of them, where you shoot a movie in one location and you're just there the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of think that's a beautiful way to make a movie that's about a small group of people, because by the time you're in your second week, they are a family, because you're sitting there for 16 hours a day. You're all eating every meal together. You're all in this together. And when you're not traveling to different locations, and one actor works one day and one actor you don't see for a week, these 4 people saw each other every day, and we were all on set watching them do this thing. And it was it was a great way to make a movie.
Did catering ever do a Quiet Place meal and serve up food?
No, but Alamo Draft House has a Quiet Place meal.
They really do. Yes. What is it, like mashed potatoes?
Yes.
It's quiet food.
Quiet food,
well, I was wondering if we can kind of go back to the beginning of how Platinum Dunes became a thing. I mean, you mentioned before that you had you guys spent 10 years remaking some properties, but I don't really know know how that came to be initially, like, and why that was the focus.
The origins of Platinum
the
Dunes.
origin of Platinum Dunes. Because
Ryan will be bored because he lived it.
He lived it?
Yeah, but I'll take you
I
through it.
have a lot of questions about some of those remakes.
Let's
I
talk
will
about it.
preface
Choices
by saying that I love A Quiet Place. And
Great.
so if you're a fair
It's
sport,
nothing
let's
I
go
haven't
through.
heard.
All
It's
right,
nothing
let's
I
do
haven't
it.
heard a million
All right, great.
times.
I can't wait.
Here's how it started. I got very lucky. I went to Wesleyan University, and I went there at an amazing time. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the film major when I was there was 25 people, because it was, there were 4 classes, freshmen through seniors, and 6 or 7 per class, and we all sat in the same room. And I'm not kidding you that to my right, Michael Bay sat here, and to my left, I had Joss Whedon. And over the course of the 4 years that I was there, John Turteltaub was there, and Miguel Ortega was there, and Toby Emmerich was there, and it was just this. Zach Penn was there when we were there.
Wow.
And
It's funny,
so,
that's not one of the schools I've ever heard of mentioned as
No,
the film school.
the best film
but you had
schools.
everyone.
That's
but
crazy.
literally, I mean, it kind of is this. It was a magical time to be there, and I say that because, although I knew Michael because we both grew up in L.A., we weren't friends. But when we were at Wesleyan together, we were film majors together. We had quite a good bond, and it was apparent to me from the first day that I met him. When I first met Michael, he was a photographer, and his pictures were just different from everything. It was just different, and he could take amazing pictures. And I mean, everyone knows that. I mean, he just makes things look better than they do in real life. And so, it was apparent to me that he was incredibly talented, and we made a couple films together at Wesleyan, and so that was that. And then when we came out here, I was at William Morris. I started in the mailroom, like a lot of people did, hoping to be an agent. And Michael's career went straight up. I mean, literally, the first thing he directed, he got a Clio for, was a Red Cross commercial. And he literally he went to Pasadena Art Center, graduated, and just started working and started making videos and whatever. Lo and behold, Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who work back into the story, they see Michael and they decide that they want to give him his first movie, which is Bad Boys. At the time, Jerry's assistant is Andrew Form, who's my other partner. So Michael meets Drew, and they become friends on Bad Boys. And Drew sticks around for The Rock. And so Michael and Drew are very close. So they have that relationship. Important in this story, Michael and Drew were both single at the time. I've been married forever. And my wife, Michael's known my wife now we've been married 25 years, but Michael's known my wife since I started dating her. So what would happen is that I would see Michael regularly on weekends, and we'd go out to dinner, my wife and Michael and myself. And, by 11, I'm ready to go home. My wife's ready to go home. We go home, and we went home. And I didn't even really think about it. This isn't Michael Bay that you know. This is Michael Bay, a guy who's directing a couple of videos. I never thought, what's Michael doing after this? I didn't think about that. But what was happening is he was meeting Drew, and they were going out till 2 or 3 in the morning. So Michael, I had this relationship with Bay that was one thing. Yeah. Drew had this relationship with Michael that was a totally different thing. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, when Michael was directing Pearl Harbor, he said to me, look, I want to make more movies. I want to start a company. I'd like you to do that with me. And literally, as my attorney reminds me all the time, at that point in my career, I was a dog shit manager with dog shit clients. That's what he says to me. So, and so I said to my wife, Michael wants to start a company with me. And she says, well, that's what you're doing, right? And Michael didn't bring it up for 6 months. And every day, I'm with him, and I'm just thinking, well, I don't want to ask him because it's his idea. Yeah. So, but one day, my phone rings, and it's Andrew Form. And he says, I know who you are. We've never met. I had dinner with Michael last night, and he says that if you and I can sit down and figure it out, we can start this company. And I said, where are you right now? I will come to wherever you were. And he told me where he was, and I went there, and I sat down with Drew for an hour, and we loved each other. We went to Michael's house that night, and we said, let's start a company, and we opened up Coronas. I remember it like it's yesterday. We toasted the Coronas, and there you go. So that's how it started.
Yeah.
You can cut that down if it's too
No, not at all. I've never heard that before. So, okay.
So there's that. So then we look at each other and we say, so what are we going to do? How can we leverage nothing? Because we had nothing. And the only thing that made sense to us at the time was if we could do low-budget movies. Now, that didn't mean anything other than low budget. And at that time, I remember there was a movie, Boogeyman, right? Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
The Sony movie.
Sony Sam Raimi.
So like that was like a $30 million movie, and that felt low budget at that time. So we kind of said, let's do something really low budget. Let's try and make a movie for $10 million. You know,
Oh my gosh. Different times.
Different times.
Yeah.
And around that time, through some relationships, the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre was presented to us, and we decided that we were going to start a company. The Platinum Dunes was going to be a company that was going to give first-time directors the opportunity to make a studio movie, and that in the same way that Don and Jerry were protected, they protected Michael on Bad Boys and the Rock. Michael was going to protect first-time directors on their first movies, and that was what we set out to do. So the first movie was Texas Chainsaw with Marcus Nispel, and he is such a talented guy, and that movie, though it was a very rough shoot, was just kind of this incredible. The outcome was incredible. I mean, I'm very proud of that film. And then we followed that up as soon as that movie worked. MGM. We actually went to MGM and asked them if they would let us remake an Amityville Horror, which we did with Ryan Reynolds and Chloe Moretz. And the director was a guy named Andrew Douglas, who was another guy who has directed a ton of videos and stuff, and he directed that. And then it just kind of went from there. And in some ways, to be honest with you, it felt like it was a little bit autopilot. I mean, we just kind of picked movies, and the studios were very generous with us, and they let us, do it. So we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning after that, and then we did The Hitcher, which didn't work out so well, and then I think, I don't know. So what
Friday
movie?
Night.
I was going to say,
Friday
I was going to say,
Night.
reach into the deep.
Let's talk about the ones you don't like. I'm happy to talk about it.
Well, I mean, let's start with one I do like. I do rather like Texas Chainsaw Massacre a lot, the remake. I thought that was interesting, but now you're on autopilot, but did you know what you were getting? Obviously, it seemed like a smart move. Like, here's a known title. We're just starting our company. This is how we make a splash. We're going to remake Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But did you really know what you were getting into and what that meant? And the
Like
reason
the fan culture
to give
and
context, I remember being at a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in New York. Probably you were there. Probably.
I was there.
And they showed what has now affectionately been referred to as the Michael Bay teaser, which wasn't actual footage from the movie. And it's actually a really cool teaser with the whole, you don't see anything. You're in the closet.
Amazing.
It breaks open. I was in the audience. Everyone booed. And I think that's the first time you realize, like, you can't remake Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
That's kind of like. So when did you realize? Were you already making the movie at that point where it's like, well, screw it, we're already committed to it? When did you know what you were stepping into? Like the gravity of what that title meant.
It's interesting. I don't know what the timing is of it, but I know Twitter didn't exist, because if it had, I would have probably been out of the business. I mean, I would. But at the time, the only place where I could go for feedback, as I recall, was IMDb had discussion pages.
Yes.
And that's where I would go, and that's where I started seeing the backlash, right? And I literally have never been to a film festival before South by Southwest this year. We'd never been invited, and we've never had a film there. So I didn't have that experience. I did go to a couple fan conventions, and it's I guess it's a long way of saying it took me a little while to understand. When we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I didn't think about any of what you were talking about. I thought we just have to make the scariest movie that we can, and there will be people who will love the original, and there will be people who hate this no matter what, and hopefully we'll find a big enough group of people who respond to the movie in a positive way. And I think that to me, it feels like we succeeded with that film.
Yeah. Because you didn't have that pressure or knowledge. You just were making it regardless.
Just to make it good.
I didn't. And I think that inversely, and I know you're going to get there, so I'm going to get there before you. When we made Nightmare on Elm Street, I felt it a lot. And the crazy thing about Nightmare on Elm Street for us at the time was that the movie came out, I think, in 2009 or 2010. 2009. We made it in 2009. It came out in 2010. And I remember that the movie at that point in our career was the most financially successful film that we'd ever done. And in my head, this is 10 years ago almost, because in 2009 I thought, oh, well, we're great. The movie made money, studio made money, we're going to keep working. And I kid you not, our phone did not ring for 2 years. 2 years, we did not make another movie. It wasn't until Blum, and I say this all the time, Blum changed our career by bringing us into The Purge. Because at that point, we were as cold as ice. And I don't think that when we set out to make Nightmare on Elm Street, that we thought that the backlash would be that bad. I didn't think that we felt, but it was. And by the way, it's very, obviously can't be objective, but I thought, we have Rooney Mara, who's a great actress, and she did a great job in it. And I thought that the casting on that movie was really good. And Sam Baer did a really strong job on it. I think I certainly heard that people were disappointed, and they reached out to me, and they're not scared to tell me that. And in my head, I just figured, you know what? We do the best we can, and we'll just keep on going. But as it got to the point after Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street where we said to each other, we have to stop doing this because there's no upside. It's only downside going forward because we've had the success financially, and it doesn't open up any other doors. So let's start thinking about what we're doing in a different way, where let's start coming up with original stories and doing things that feel a little bit different.
Well, the horror genre was changing.
Yeah.
The climate was changing. We had gone through that kind of period where there was just a lot of remakes. Beyond what you guys were doing, we were seeing Dawn of the Dead. We were seeing a lot of the remnants of J-horror remakes kind of filtering through. So
and it was on all budget levels, like everything from like big budget ones like Nightmare on Elm Street down to much like indie stuff.
Were you guys entertaining the passion projects in between each one of these, or was there no time to look at that?
No, we did one in 2005, and we got kicked in the nuts pretty hard. It was called Horseman, and that was a thing that just didn't work at all, and that was really hard for us. I mean, because we had gone, it felt like Hitcher was a misstep, I guess. It didn't really do what we wanted, but Horseman was really bad, and not the movie, but the way it was. It's a brutal film, and and it just wasn't something that got people excited.
Was that related to the Australian film, The Horseman?
No, this is Jonas Ackerlund, who's an amazing director. He directed it. It just
the Dennis Quaid one.
Yeah, and it's a brutal film. I mean, no one would want to watch it. The ending of that film is something rough. I can't believe that we shot. Honestly, and then it's interesting though. In response to that, though. In response to Horseman, it feels like we said, okay, we got to do something original, and that's where The Unborn came from, because we wanted to work with, we loved Goyer, we'd known Goyer, and he had written that script, and we said, it's original, let's just do it, because we haven't done that.
Yeah. Gary Oldman, right? In there?
Yeah, Gary Oldman playing a rabbi.
Which I remember seeing it's a great film. I remember seeing the press, and I remember there being some kind of skepticism going into it with a lot of the critics. And I remember being in the critic screening and everybody being really excited about it at the end of it.
Listen, it was a fun movie to make. I loved working with David. I mean, he was so fun on that movie, and the cast was great. And Gary Oldman and Idris Elba. I mean, it was kind of this crazy good cast. But that was the first time that we really did an original film.
And some of the, I think the funny thing about remaking of horrors is that most of these horror films were super low budget movies with nobody attached, and then they kind of just broke, and instead you're making like $100 million version of Friday the 13th, which Nightmare on Elm Street's the only one that maybe suits having a big budget because of the dream elements. But with Jason, Nightmare, it's just so interesting to me to see this big, slick, glossy version. So that's one of the things that maybe creates a little distancing because of that. Because you almost could imagine you guys just going, all right, $5 million every year, and there's a new Jason movie every year, and see what happens. But I know that's what the fans say. So
But that wasn't a thought at that point. You weren't making movies for $5 million.
Right. Yeah.
Jason Bourne. I mean, Blum hadn't happened yet. But I will say this: Friday the 13th, hands down, for me personally, that and Quiet Place were the two best experiences of making a film. Of just actually, I mean, to me, I feel like our Friday the 13th. Yes, it's glossy. Everyone, the good-looking kid, the whole thing. Yeah. But I think that we were able to inject some of the original DNA back into the movie and do some things that felt really fun. And when I watch that movie, it just feels like a fun ride, which is really what we set out to do. So that's why I was very satisfied with that film.
So would you guys ever approach a remake again?
I'd love to. I can't get the rights figured out. They'll probably end up here. I mean, it's a real quagmire, those rights. There are... I mean, we were 5 a year ago. Was it a year ago? A year ago, we were 5 weeks from shooting. Breck Eisner was going to direct a script from Aaron Guzikowski. It was a great script. We were all excited. And Paramount decided they didn't want to make the movie.
Has it always been a rights issue since the first one came out? Because
no,
I mean, the one thing that we always like kind of argue, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but we're like, they're overthinking it. It's not that hard to make another Friday the 13th. Just Jason, kids, bring him back.
No, I get it. Yeah. And you're right. And we do overthink it. Absolutely.
Okay.
There was a tricky thing that happened in, when Paramount had the rights to, I want to make sure I get this right. Paramount had the rights to Interstellar.
Right.
That's right. I remember the story. And
they had to do something with Warner Brothers. And Rob Moore he was our patron saint. And when we were having trouble getting Friday the 13th off the ground, Rob Moore was there he saved us. There were a couple key times when I could call Rob and I'd say, I'm not able to get this done. And he'd say, well, the paperwork isn't closed. I say, I know, but I need to buy the camp. And he'd say, I'll take care of it. And he did. And so, when the rights to Interstellar came to Paramount and they made that movie with Warner Brothers, somehow they negotiated the rights for Friday the 13th, but it was a limited window.
Right.
I think it was 3 years or 4 years.
Because Paramount has the title Friday the 13th. New Line has the character Jason.
That's right.
Is that how?
That's right. But they came to an agreement. So Paramount had a limited amount of time to make the movie. And that was the ticking clock when we were getting ready to make the movie 2 years ago or last year, whenever it was. And so when we were not able to make the movie, the rights now, I think, have reverted back to New Line, which is great. It's a great place to make the movie. And if I'll say here now, if they'd like us to produce the movie for them, we would be delighted to. So I think the rights are now at New Line, but there's also a lawsuit that I'm not on top of.
Victor
the
Sean Cunningham thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The original writer.
And so I'm not sure where that is, but I'm telling you that I can't imagine any studio is going to get involved when the original rights holder with a lawsuit. So we're all waiting, but we would love to do it in a second. I mean,
there's one way to get all of these parties on the same page and make this movie, and that's Jason in the Snow.
Yes,
that's all you need to do is announce a variety, Jason in the Snow, and everyone will come together.
We had it.
Oh man,
we had a script with Jason.
All right,
in
this
the
is
Snow.
just sad now. Let's stop this. This is just a commit.
Not this draft that we were going to shoot, but the sequel we were going to do for New Line after our movie in 2009,
which is how I think that the Jason in the Snow rumor got started.
Well, I think everyone's just craved it because of the ice hockey match.
No, the scene is some kids are playing hockey and they discover a body under the ice, and then he sees them discover it. And they don't finish their hockey game.
See, it ain't hard. It's just beautiful.
It's wonderful, right?
You guys want Jason in the Snow, but how are you going to put hot kids in summer guard?
No, then we cut to 3 months or 4 months later.
Where it's melted.
The whole movie doesn't have to be
just the
so
opening.
right.
During the summer, it's a normal summer camp, but during the winter, it's a ski lodge. It totally works.
What do you think with Nightmare? Actually, weirdly enough, I've always said to people just jokingly that I was the one who ruined Nightmare because I was living in Chicago, and as an extra in a scene where Rooney comes into a library, they put me behind the library in which he entered, then they put me in the scene next to it, and I realized I would have been in both shots, the shot reverse shot. And I remember thinking, of course, neither end up in the movie because of this. So
because of you, we cut it.
Exactly. So I think I ruined the film.
Fucked up the movie, Kane.
But it did one thing crossed my mind because I do think Jackie Earle Haley's a great actor, and I think he actually did a good job with it. But I remember when it came out, I always remembered this Roger Corman quote about movies, and he said, "In my experience, the monster should always be bigger than the girl." And I remember thinking, in this case, it was the first time that the monster was actually shorter than the female character. And I thought maybe because Robert Englund has this tall frame, and it's always just alchemy. These are little things that make the movie what it is.
And yes, absolutely. God, Jackie had a really hard job on that movie, and the makeup was not fun for him. And he would walk around with that claw, and it was, if he would have fallen, or it wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
That part was not fun for him, and I don't know what we would have done differently. I really don't know what we would have done differently. but it feels like maybe we should have done something different.
And you back because the idea of, I guess, going with first-time directors, I think that's an awesome idea, especially for horror films, but obviously risky when they're big-budgeted horror films. And I know he directed Nevermind and a lot of music videos.
All right, so I have a controversial question about Sam Bayer.
Sure.
No, and look, when that was announced, to me, these were all the elements that made young Rob G who he was. When I was a kid, Nightmare on Elm Street was my gateway into the horror genre. Nirvana is my favorite band of all time. So when I saw Smells Like Teen Spirit video, I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. But the thing is this, and this is an interesting question for you as a producer, especially in terms of you make a movie, you have this experience. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they're very difficult, but like kind of the aftermath of that. And the one thing that kind of really upset me as a fan is after the movie came out, almost every interview with Sam Bayer, he would start by saying, I really didn't want to do this movie. They kept coming back to me, and I finally gave it and I did it. And to me, that's like, you're kind of saying, I really didn't give a shit to make this, but these producers kept asking me to do it. And so my question there is multiple fold, is if that's true, then why did you think he was the guy to do it if he's saying he wasn't? And at the same time, how do you as a producer deal with that kind of response after giving a filmmaker that opportunity? And again, I know it's difficult.
Right. No, it's not difficult. I'm happy to talk about it. Sam was the guy for us. He's absolutely right. We went after him repeatedly. I think we offered him every movie because when you talk about visual style and the ability to make things feel rich and cool, he's the guy. And I still feel that way. I think that Sam visually is as exciting as any director that I've worked with. And but part of Sam's personality, we did go to him for a lot of times, and he, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want. I mean, Sam is like he's an artist, right? He's a real artist. I mean, he paints, he takes his photography, and I think that when he got into directing, he never thought that he would ever direct Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that he thought that he was going to direct
like Basquiat or something.
Yeah,
Like, it'd be like Schnabel or
Thank
something.
you. Thank you. I mean, I was thinking of the movie with Halle Berry and Billy
Monster
Bob.
Ball.
That was the movie he wanted to
that makes
direct.
sense.
That was Sam's deal. And
you guys just wanted to work with him in
we
general.
wanted to work with him. We would pick directors who we wanted to work with, and we would keep going back to them because I think that there was a belief that we could surround a first-time director with a great crew, and their lack of experience in most of the directors we worked with were great sprinters, and they had never run a marathon. And we always felt like we could surround them with enough coaches to get them through the marathon, and they could do what they did well, and where they had deficiencies, we could beef up the crew and help them. So now here's the interesting thing. I don't know that I listened to Sam's interviews when that happened, and because by that point I'd been so burned by the public, I probably didn't want to listen to what anyone had to. Do you know what I'm saying? So because there was such a cacophony of negativity at that point that I was just like, I'm just going to make these things and we'll see what happens. But I can see Sam saying that because that's who Sam is. That's just who he is. He's cool. He's cool, and he would never make it seem like he wanted to do it. And we did beg him. He's right. We did that. I think he passed 3 times on the movie. We just kept going back to his office and not taking the pass. And we finally convinced him. And Michael was a big part of that. I think Bay wrote him a letter, and then he said no, and then Bay called. I mean, we wanted Sam. So I understand that. Now, the second part of your question was what?
Well, I mean, you kind of answered. You said you didn't ever hear his interviews, but I was thinking of a producer, from a producer standpoint, somebody kind of talking negatively about the experience. Because that's how I, as a fan, interpreted it.
Right.
Is it's like, well, why'd they get this guy to direct it if he didn't want to do it when there's, which leads to another question, which is, why don't you work with somebody that is like Ryan, who grew up diehard fan of this stuff? Is it because they're too close to the material? Like Sam doesn't want to do Nightmare on Elm Street because he never grew up with it. But there's 100 filmmakers in Hollywood on varying levels that grew up loving that original movie and probably would kill to remake it. So do you know what I mean? It's like, is there any reason you wouldn't pluck a horror fanatic that is also a director to helm one of these remakes and that would probably put their heart into it?
It depends on the director, because I think if someone is so inside of it and they can't see outside, that's also a limitation too, because our job is to make a movie not just for the fans, but for the people who have no idea what the property is. And if everything is inside, I don't think you're going to expand the audience. So it depends on who you're talking about and their take on what it is. But I think that we all, when we're working on a movie, we get myopic anyway from the work. And if someone comes into it with some very strong views of the way that the thing needs to be executed, that probably is not, especially if they haven't directed anything before, their views are not supported by experience. And it's probably, I'm just telling you, sitting right here, that doesn't feel like the right fit for us. It doesn't. I mean, John Krasinski had not directed a horror movie.
I think your answer, what's so fascinating about even bringing this up, is that if we look at the problem that Nightmare had, which is you had the right visual stylist, you had the right property, but then you have Krasinski with all the same things line up, except that Krasinski found a way to personalize this material, and the other, and he didn't, but Sam didn't, and that's the difference with how these things then develop, which is fascinating. It's something quite intangible.
Right.
Is that person needs to find their buy and their in.
That's
the
right.
story.
That's right. And by the way, when you're hiring a director, there's no way of knowing if they're going to until it's way too late.
Well, did you explore a first-timer for Friday the 13th before going back to Marcus?
Well, again, I just am so blown away by Marcus's talent, and there, just so we can be clear, there were years when I wouldn't talk to Marcus, and we had a falling out, and we've come back together, and now I consider him a close friend of mine. But Marcus is another guy. Drew and I we're going through all this. All I'm seeing in my life now is going to these guys' offices and begging them to do movies with us. But for Marcus especially, I thought the Texas Chainsaw was so on the money in terms of the feel of it and the whole thing that I really wanted him to do that movie. I really did. And I didn't think about, the only other person I probably thought about was Sam Bear at the time. I mean, honestly. And I had a better. I'm sure that Sam wouldn't have done that. And Marcus, when I talked to him, he was open to it.
Yeah. Were there any remakes that we don't know about or the fan base doesn't know about that you were close to acquiring? Were you chasing anything that was like deep in the vault? I know that there was one time you were thinking you guys had Near Dark on the table. You had the Birds.
Well, let's talk about the one that hurts the
wow.
most.
All right, which one's that?
Halloween. So I'll be tweeting about Blum coming.
Fair enough.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Did you go after Halloween?
We went after Halloween hardcore, and we couldn't get it. I think we had it for a minute, or we didn't get it, or that was complicated. But we were in the hunt for a long time, and we didn't have that. Yes, we went down the road on Near Dark with Sam Bear.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, Sam Bear was going to. That's how we started.
That probably would have worked. Weirdly enough,
I think it would have too.
Maybe the punk sensibility and stuff could have lined.
And Chris Landon did the script for us on that Near Dark, and it was really good.
I see the wheels turning on Ryan's side. I know what email you're sending tonight.
I know what Ryan's thinking.
I'd love to read that.
It's a good draft. It's a really good draft. You should call Chris. He did a good draft on that.
Well, there's one that I am kind of glad didn't happen, but I'm curious your take on why, and if you thought it resonated with you, is the Monster Squad, which I just learned from the documentary that we're a part of. Was that one that was on the cards at one point?
For sure.
Okay.
And it might still be. I mean, that's a property that we love. I think Shane Black is just a master of what he does, and Fred Decker, the two of them in a room, is super fun, and they're really bright guys. I think at the time when we were trying to make that at Paramount. We had a really fun script, really fun. But as time goes by, certain things will seem ridiculous. But there was a time when kids couldn't be in dangerous situations when we were making movies here, and so
now in the wake of Stranger Things, it's like
that's right, or it. So we couldn't figure out how to have that happen with the kids not really being in peril, and so it kind of felt like a feathered fish in the movie. The thing we challenge ourselves at our company all the time is, what gives this movie a reason to exist? And frankly, on the Monster Squad movie, we couldn't figure it out. I mean, it was great. The script is hilarious. Mark and Brian Gunn wrote a really, really fun script, but we couldn't get it to the point where it had to happen, so it died.
Making an original film like you guys just did, and having the vindication that A, it's a great film, but B, it's really connected to people, and it's also doing as well as any of the other movies you ever did that were based on other properties. How does that change you going forward? And also knowing, especially with things like properties like Nightmare, where it made a lot of money, but you will never know if it just made that purely because of the title.
That's right.
But to make something that's not based on that, a title that meant nothing to anyone until they saw that movie, how does that going to change you think going forward?
Well, I could say that the experience with A Quiet Place is the most gratifying experience that I've been a part of in terms of just taking a risk and really hanging yourself out there. And there was not one thing about A Quiet Place that was about a financial reward, right? And to the point where it's not that relevant, but we forewent our fee on the movie because we believed in it so much. And it's incredibly rewarding now that the money wasn't driving any part of this, and it was just a belief that this was a story that could work, and the only thing we had to focus on was the execution of it and supporting John in his vision of it. And that, I think, took us 18 years to figure out. And that's not to say that we won't do remakes, because we would, as I said, do Friday the 13th in a second. But it's extremely gratifying to take that risk and not have any net below you and have it work out. Because I think with a remake, you do have a net, as you said. There is a certain number of people who will go and see it, trash it, and then there'll be other people who will go to see it just to see what you've done with something that they care about.
Are there elements that you could learn from a Quiet Place and your feeling after Nightmare to bring back to remakes? So if you continue to make a new remake, is there something you could bring from the other experiences that might alter how you might go about it, or is it still pretty much the same kind of formula?
It's harder to make remakes for us now than it was back then. I think that a lot of the rights have been, this is the wrong verb, picked over, and I don't want to remake something that I don't care about and that I didn't care about as a kid and that I don't have passion for. So just to remake something doesn't make a lot of sense. But having said that, in the TV world, I tried to take a property, Internal Affairs, and turn it into a television show with Frank Grillo. And that was a very exciting experience. It didn't pan out, but there was a core story that most people don't know the story. You kind of know what Internal Affairs is.
You're talking about the Richard Gere
Grieco
film? Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But we came up with a really interesting story and rooted it in something that was happening in police culture right now, and it was really interesting. It was a big disappointment that it didn't pan out the way we had hoped, but that's something that I'm definitely open to in the right situation. But I don't think, I'm trying to think what titles are out there that, because we've considered all of them. I'm less interested in that now. I'm more interested in finding a concept that works, that feels fresh, and a filmmaker that is going to have the same passion for the material that we do. And a lot of times that's a writer-director.
Right.
Since that night that you guys toasted over Coronas, how have you changed or maybe matured as a producer? What's the one kind of takeaway? Maybe something that you've learned or grown over.
Listen. Every movie is a brand new experience, and I come away with everything. I think that the difference with me today, as opposed to back then, is that I felt in our first movies that whatever went wrong, that it was a disaster and I couldn't fix it. And I feel more today that because I've been through a lot of these things a number of times, that I have the knowledge. That's the only thing that age really gives you, is the knowledge to be able to get through the things. Negotiations used to be a very stressful thing for me. And if you step back from trying to get an actor in a movie or a director in a movie or a writer to write a movie, I'd say that 99% of the negotiations go the exact same way. You make the offer, they're offended, they yell at you, and you say, well, I understand, and let me see what I can do, and then you go back and forth, and a lot of times it works out. But when that used to happen, and they were offended, I would start to panic then, and then the panic would last all the way through to the end of it. So now I'm along for the ride. So, and you can apply that to different parts of filmmaking, post, testing a movie, the marketing plan, all of it. It just doesn't have the same emotional resonance to me that it did back when I was younger.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, is there a kind of film you haven't gotten to make? Because that's a long period of your life to have dedicated to, certain types of movies.
Yeah.
Is there something that you have yet to be able to touch on that you're kind of itching to, no matter how far out the box, and not horror or whatever?
It doesn't. I don't necessarily look at it like I want to make certain genre of film. I kind of want now to find a story and people I want to work with. I guess everyone says that. I think that we recognize at our company that there is something that we're good at, and we like being good at it, and we want to continue doing that. It doesn't feel to me like there's a skill set there that we've worked hard to get that we should turn off. Right? So I don't think we're going to be the guys that are going to bring you a musical, and I don't think we're going to ever.
I'm a little bummed over that.
Now.
It was my favorite class in college was the musicals class. Bay too. He loved that class. But I don't think that's ever going to happen, and I don't think that we're going to be the guys that are ever going to shoot for a drama that that's just not who we are. And by the way, there are other producers who people should work with who have the knowledge to get that done. But if there's something with an emotional response that the audience feels something when they're watching it, and if they don't want to make it for a ton of money, we're a viable option.
Of those big horror properties, whether you did it or not, whether it was a remake or not, what was the one? Because we usually start at people's childhood, and I always loved that. Like, what horror films as a kid? But you mentioned, you just kind of touched on as a kid something you loved. But what was the franchise for you, or the single horror film when you were young that you really, kind of hooked you?
It's not that simple for me because I grew up in Westwood.
So old movies.
But I would go to the movie theater all the time. And it's very easy to say that seeing Star Wars with my dad in 1976 at the Avco or 77. 77 in the Avco, definitely a seminal experience in my life. But even more seminal than that was when I was 6 or 7 years old, I had to go to the bathroom, and I was in Westwood, and my dad went to the Bruin, and he said, "Can my son use the bathroom?" And so I went upstairs and I used the bathroom, and The Exorcist was playing. And I heard people screaming, and I heard her being possessed, and it scared me to death. And I kind of ran away from that, from having that experience. Just going to the bathroom. I didn't see The Exorcist. Just hearing it. And so that definitely affected me in a profound way too. But you come back to it's Star Wars and Risky Business for me are the two movies that really kind of
That's a good mix.
Well,
With
we
some
always,
Exorcist sound design.
Well, we always ask people that their childhood thing, but also contemporary. Like, do you keep up on modern horror movies, or the things either in the independent world, studio world, that excite you that you've seen as of late?
Yes, I do. I like The Shape of Water. I thought that was, it's astonishing that he was able to get that through and to be his vision and what it is. It's also a very simple thing to say that I love The Shape of Water. I mean, obviously, Three Billboards. I find that my taste now is interestingly, I'm not. I called my son. My son's 24 years old, and I was talking to him on the phone on the way here, and I said to him, "If I go see Avengers, will I understand it?" And he said to me, "Well, have you seen all of the there
17 movies?"
And I haven't. And I didn't see Civil War, or I saw Civil War late. Yeah. And I didn't understand why they were fighting. So he said to me, he said, "Well, you can't go see. You got to get caught up, and it's a great movie, but you got to get caught up to go see it." So for some reason, those movies are less enticing. I'm telling you that last weekend I sat down and watched Step Brothers and The Towering Inferno, and I could not have been happier.
I like that combo.
I mean, Towering Inferno is a great
original.
It's a great movie, and the cast is unbelievable. It's a little long, like it's 250. I mean,
all of those are. All the disaster movies are.
But I love those for
Thor Ragnarok.
I saw it.
Okay, I was going to say that one. I loved it. I know nothing about any of the other kind of superhero movies. Very peripheral knowledge, but I loved Thor Ragnarok.
But let's really talk about how Step Brothers still holds up.
It's so fun.
So good. Yes. So
well, the Towering Inferno would make a great double bill with the original Blob, because they both feature Steve McQueen fighting an unstoppable force and trying to
Good
save
point.
a bunch of people. So there
Good
you
point.
go.
They're gonna say Skyscraper.
But Skyscraper, is that Towering Inferno?
No.
Oh,
I think it's more. I think it's a little bit of Towering Inferno meets Die Hard. I think,
Right.
but I can't really. I don't know. I haven't been following.
Right.
Yeah.
So should we get Shane Black on the speaker so we can pitch Predator Purge right now?
Yeah.
Predator.
Predator.
I got you in the room.
This is his pitch.
I got you in the
here we go.
room.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll have to
So-
show you. We'll have to show you the fan
There's
trailer.
a fan
that was-
trailer
I'd love to
now,
see
right?
that. I'd love to see
Yeah.
that.
Elric's been talking about this for a while, where it's Purge
Predator
night
should
and
come
then
down.
the Predator shows
That's
up.
awesome.
That's
Right?
the ultimate
And-
hunt.
We'll just we'll call Blum right now.
Yeah,
We
let's
got
just make
everybody
this happen
room.
in the room.
Shane, let's do it. Yeah.
All right, Brad. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you
man.
so
It's
much
been a
for
long
joining
time.
us.
You've been awesome. That's really fantastic.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And congrats on part 2 whenever that happens. That's exciting.
Thank you very much.
And next week, you'll be hearing from Ryan as he visits the Overlook.
That's right.
And you'll hear a fantastic panel that he did at the Overlook. And then hopefully, while that's playing, we will be seeing you in Texas for
Texas Frightmare.
Texas
We'll be there.
Frightmare. And you can come touch Kane's face.
You can.
And go pick up some Halloween posters.
Okay.